So I'm excited to be here. I love coming here and getting to preach. And like you said, I have a lot of information today. I'm going to talk fast, tell some stories, and hopefully walk out of here with a really clear message. So my name is Tyler. When I introduce myself to people, when someone says, Tyler, introduce yourself, it's really funny. I didn't notice this, but I always say, hi, my name is Tyler, and then I go into a list of my titles. It happens every time. I'll say something like, I'm Tyler. I'm a chaplain at the University of Rhode Island, and I just kind of go into what I do. I don't know why, if that's the most important title in my life, but that's just kind of what I've realized. I realized even when I was introducing myself on Instagram, when it says give your little profile, I just gave a list of my titles. I didn't really realize this until it says dude, father, husband, campus minister, coffee lover, kayaker, backpacker, surfer, Jesus follower. I just give a list of my titles. There's something about when we introduce ourselves and who we are, our titles mean something to us. Today's entire message is that your title tells your story. Whatever title you have, so everyone was supposed to get some kind of name tag when they came in, and I don't know what you guys put on there. You don't have to talk to people if you don't want, but I do love, you can walk around after this and you can look at people's titles that's most important to them. Honestly, those titles define them in so many ways. It tells you what they care about, what they do. Your titles tell your story. And so maybe I am an extrovert. I just think it'd be cool to get to know people. I bet you know there's a title that someone has that you did not know that they had. My daughter went up to actually Keith and just said, I didn't know you were a coach. And I think that's really cool that you can do that and get to know people a little bit more. There was one title, though, that really hit me the most. That just was a recent thing. Usually the titles I choose and I kind of walk into. But this title in 2020 kind of changed my life forever. And it was right during the middle of the pandemic. Me and my wife decided that we were going to adopt two kids. And we met these two kids through a hosting program. And they came over from Ukraine. And we spent pretty much a few weeks with them. They actually were in our home. My daughter went up to my wife. She had very little English, didn't know much English at all, but knew enough to walk up to her in our kitchen like the first 5 minutes of meeting her and saying, would you be my mama? And it's really hard to be like, no, we got things to do. So it was pretty quickly after that we decided that we were going to adopt these two kids from Ukraine, and it took 12 months for us to do this. And so it's this long journey through the pandemic, and all of a sudden I get a call in the middle of it in the summer that says, well, you need to go over, you need to go pick up your kids. Now, during this time, I didn't really feel like a father yet. They're kind of across the world. We're talking through like FaceTime and stuff like that, but I don't really feel like their father. And so when I get over there, I get pretty much custody of my son right away. He was 16, so he aged out of the orphanage, so I pretty much got custody of him almost immediately when I went over there. But my daughter was different. She was still the property of the state. She was in the orphanage, and I could only have visitation rights to go see her occasionally. And so me and my son bonded immediately. We were super close. I feel like we got really close together. And my daughter was a completely different story. She was a little bit harder to read. She didn't know any English at the time, so it was harder to connect with her. And she was just harder to win over. If you know her now, that's actually quite funny because she's easy to win over now. But she was really hard. So I had my son, and we had to go over, and they have to sign a letter of intent, which is actually the picture on the left. They have to sign a letter of intent to be adopted because they're old enough to choose who they want to go with. And so I'm terrified. I have not seen my daughter yet. I'm about to go over to this orphanage. And so this is the first time I'm going to see her in 12 months. And so I'm terrified. I have not won her over. Like I said, she doesn't know English. And so I'm literally like petrified walking into this meeting with my daughter. And she comes in, and if you know anything about Ukraine, they're like super serious. They have this face that they just want to kill you. It's like, I don't know. I just want to be like, smile every once in a while. And so she had this face that she was like this serious walking in. And I can't imagine what she was thinking because she doesn't know me very well. She's leaving her family, her friends. She's leaving the culture she has. She's leaving all of that to go over to this complete stranger and go over to America and to live her life. And so I can't imagine how terrified she is meeting me after 12 months. And I'll never forget this because she walks in and I'm like sweating and I'm nervous and my son's like, chill out. And I'm just kind of like, I'm really nervous. And she comes in and the director of the orphanage is with her. And she's kind of hiding behind the director at this time. And the director looks over at me and looks at her. And I'll never forget this because he ends up asking me, she ends up asking her, do you know who this man is? And at that moment, I'm all like, I really hope she answers this correctly. And I'll never forget because she kind of like peers out over behind the director's legs and just simply says, Papa. And it was the most amazing moment because I didn't really know what she was going to say. I didn't know if she even liked me or if she even wanted to be adopted. I was kind of like nervous to this whole thing. But that word, in a moment, I feel like my entire title changed. I feel like Papa became the title that I absolutely loved. It was a title that for the first time I actually felt like a papa. The whole time I was like, I don't really know how to do this parenting thing. And in that moment, I actually felt like for the first time, I really was their dad. Titles tell your story. And I don't know what title you guys have, but you may have a lot of different titles. Maybe it is father or mom, and that could be there's a lot of weight to it so often. It could be son or daughter or brother or sister, whatever title you have. And once again, these sometimes are good and they bring a lot of joy to your life, but sometimes they're kind of scary and they bring a lot of pain, depending on your story. Maybe it's dating, single, or confused. And I know this is also hard for so many of my students that I hang out with. This is a really hard title, wherever they're at. It brings a lot of pain or immense amount of joy. It could be wealthy or broke or successful or failure. There could be these things that you have tried different things and maybe you have failed, and that's a title or label you carry around with you. Maybe it's broken, not good enough, weird, loser. These titles don't have to always be good things. Sometimes we put labels on ourselves or titles that are not necessarily what we want. It could be an athlete, star, bench warmer, or cheerleader. And so often, if you know me, I'm an athlete, and I still consider myself an athlete in so many different ways, and yet I'm 40, and I should get over that. But I do. It could be Christian, atheist, Pentecostal, non-denominational, whatever that is. There's a ton of titles that we walk around with our faith as well. Introvert. Thank you, Keith. Extrovert. Hard worker. Rule follower, rule breaker. There's one I really resonate with up there. You can guess which one it is. I don't know about you, but there's these titles that we have that we actually live by. Our titles tell our story. And I say that because titles in this particular passage we're going to read is going to be so vital to understand what this passage is about. It's a very common passage. If you've been in church at any point, I guarantee you probably know this story. And so I'm hoping it's going to be a little bit different take on it today, because I think it's a story you can read and just say, yeah, I get it. I've heard this before. So we're going to turn to John 13. It's going to be on the screen about 1 through 17. It's a lot of information today, but I absolutely love this story and what it's going to say. This is what it says. In verse 13, it says, "Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. And during supper, when the devil had already put in the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him." Now we're going to stop there. This is the Last Supper. It's a very common, very popular story. It says days before Jesus is going to be crucified. So he has a couple days left of his life, and he knows that. He's very aware that his hour has come and he's about to die. Think about the weight that must carry. He's going to die for something that's a political scheme of him living this upside down life and kind of changing how culture looks at people and leaders. And because of that, people want to kill him because he's changing way too much. He's going to die for something that is unfair. And so he has this very popular, this very big Passover. It's a festival in the Jewish faith that is huge. It is a really big time for the Jews. And they gather for a meal called the Passover meal. And in this moment, he knows that not only is he going to die, but his best friend is going to betray him. And he knows this is going to happen. Think about the weight of your best friend, somebody you've poured into for 3 years, is going to betray you, leading to your death. Not only that, but Luke's gospel says that his best friends, these 12 guys around this table, start arguing about who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Think about this. Jesus is about to die. He's about to pass over the reins of the kingdom to these 12 people. In the final hours of his life, or before he's getting arrested, he's going to hear his best friends start arguing. Not only betray him, but arguing about who's going to be the greatest. I can't imagine what he's feeling in this moment of, I have failed. I'm going to leave this kingdom to these people that are still don't get it, and it's hours before I'm going to be arrested. I can't imagine the pressure, the feeling of what that looks like in that moment for Jesus to have to deal with that. As we continue, it says this: Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, he had come from God and was going back to God, rose from supper. He laid aside his outer garments, taking a towel, tied it around his waist. And then he poured into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was wrapped around him. It's an incredible scene and something that I think we miss in our culture because we don't do this in our culture. Actually, if we did, that Maybe it's the same about a thing. If somebody says, I want you to wash my feet, maybe the first thing would be like, I'm never going to touch your feet. I don't know if you're one of those people. My wife loves foot massages, and I hate feet. There's something about it. There's something about feet I don't like. So it was common courtesy in the first century that when you invited guests over to your house, you greet them with a kiss, and then you ask them if they want their feet washed. And it's because they had sandals on, the roads were always dirty, and so their feet were by far the nastiest. Think about feet today and how disgusting they are. Think about first century. It was totally disgusting. And that's why they offered, before you were going to eat a meal, to offer to wash their feet. And the host never did this, because in that culture it was all about status. It was all about, what does this look like? You always had a servant wash someone else's feet. The host never did it. They're about to eat with the friends and with the visitors. They didn't do this. And so it's so not only just uncommon, it was unheard of for the host to wash someone's feet. It's pretty amazing, because I can't think of an illustration in our culture of what that would be like. The only thing I can think of is like the Queen of England coming to your house and saying, can I wash your toilets? It's one of those things that, like, it'd be unfair. You're like, what are you talking about? You don't clean toilets. This is not what you do. And that's not even a good comparison, because it's just something that didn't happen. It was so outside of what was supposed to happen, that the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, this person that literally is God in the flesh that has come down, isn't supposed to do this. Not only that, but the Jews, when they think of the Messiah, why the disciples are so confused is that this was not at all what they thought the Messiah was supposed to do. Jesus breaks every social norm or kind of biblical norm of what they thought the Messiah was going to do. They thought the Messiah was going to be this military leader that was going to come down, and everybody believed this, that they were going to take them out of the suffering of Rome, and he was going to get back on the king of David's throne, and he was going to rule Israel. That's what they thought for centuries about who the Messiah would be. This idea that Jesus would have them over during Passover and then wash their feet was just unheard of. It would stop everybody in the room, and they would think, what is happening in this moment? And I love this, because this is exactly what Jesus does. And you may be thinking, what is he doing? Why is he doing this? And the answer is actually in the text. And I absolutely love this. This is why we did the titles, because I love this. In verse 3, this is what it says. It says, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, that he had full authority, that says God gave him authority not only on earth, but in heaven. That he had come from God and was going back to God. His identity, his title was that he was from God and he was going back to God. And if you know that title, you can do anything. I love this so often, that he is able to serve because he has nothing to prove. He knows who he is. He doesn't have to impress the disciples. He's above the disciples. He knows the authority he has on earth and in heaven. He has nothing to prove. He has nothing to think about. He has nothing to impress. He knows that he can lower himself because he knows who he is. You know why so many of us don't serve? It's because I don't think we know who we are. I think we still have these issues. We have these identity issues. I don't think that we have sin issues. I think we have identity issues. You struggle with lust not because you have a lust problem, it's because you have an identity problem. You don't know who you are. You struggle with pride, not because you have a pride problem, because you have an identity problem. You don't know who you are in Jesus. And because we don't know who we are, we settle for titles and labels that are beneath who we really are. We don't serve because we're trying to measure up, prove ourselves to other people, trying to be loved. If I could do this, then people will love me. If I could do this, then I will be accomplished. If I do this, then I will be successful. And so we can't lower ourselves to serve because we don't know who we are. I can't be generous because I need to know that money equals success. I can't wash someone's feet because I need to look more powerful. I can't take time to help people study or to help people because I also need to study and get a good grade. I can't look weak because I'm a leader. I can't give up my time because I'm important. We don't know who we are. And so we settle for not serving, but trying to live out different titles or labels into our world. I don't know about you guys, I love movies. I grew up in the 90s where Blockbuster was a huge deal. Anybody been to a Blockbuster? This is more the crowd. All my students are like, what is a Blockbuster? For me, it was Family Video. I don't know if you guys have Family Video. Do you guys have Family Video? No. Oh, come on, guys. So I remember every weekend, it was a big thing. We would all go, my entire family would go to the movie theater and you'd peruse the aisles. It's so weird now that you can just like go through Netflix and you don't have to physically go to a store and walk. I remember this. We'd all pick a movie out and then we'd all fight and we'd only get to pick one. Every time. It was a family thing that we would do. And there's something about movies that I love lines and different quotes of different movies. And especially in the 90s, I feel like there were so many amazing movies that came out. There's something about a movie when they have a line, and usually these big epic lines come in a number of different ways. One, it's usually like in a very intense moment, right? When you're at the most intense moment, when pressure is squeezing you, what's going to come out of these characters in these movies that I loved? And it was always before a big battle. It was always when they're about to die, or maybe they were dying and they yell out something. Every time there's these moments that I absolutely loved. When pressure comes, these are when these epic lines came out. One of my favorite is Braveheart. So I don't know if you've seen Braveheart. It's an old movie. My college students have probably never even seen Braveheart. Bowden, have you seen Braveheart? I'm just curious. Okay. So I love this movie because once again, at the moment, at the most intense, if you know the movie, he's this Scottish warrior that's trying to fight for freedom from England. And before an epic battle, they're about to go and they're about to fight the English. And all the Scottish are like, we can't win. We're outnumbered. We can't win. They have more weapons, more people. And the whole time they're like, we need to leave. And if you know the story, William Wallace is on his horse and he's kind of like rallying the troops. And I love this line as he goes. He tells people that they can take his life, but they will never take his freedom. It's like one of the most powerful. He's got war paint on, and I'm like in the seat, like, yeah, I want to go fight in that moment. When your moment of pressure, when life squeezes you, that is when your true character comes out. And his title of being free was the number one thing for him. He was going to fight no matter what because that was his title that he had. Another one that I absolutely love, and this is not a great example because it's kind of a negative example, but Gladiator is another one. I just absolutely love this movie. And he says this quote. So if you know anything about Gladiator, he was a Roman soldier that now is a gladiator, and he wants vengeance because his family had died. And so in the moment of pressure, once again, when he meets the person that killed his family, at that moment, he ends up saying this line: "My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the north, general of the Felix legions, loyal servant to the true emperor, Marcus Aurelius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next." And if you know that scene, it is so powerful. Hollywood knows this, that your titles tell your story. He just lists a ton of his titles and why he was going to do what he did. Vengeance makes sense if these are the titles that you put on your name tag. If somebody has those on your name tag, pray for them because their life is going to be hard. If your title is a father of a murdered son, vengeance is the only explanation that makes sense after that. If that is the most important title or label you have in your life, it's going to define your life. And Hollywood knows this. They make movies based on titles and labels and how they're going to live their life. And what I love about Jesus in this story is that when Jesus is at the moment of pressure, at the end of his life, his friends are going to betray him. When he is squeezed, what comes out? It isn't that he's powerful, that he's I'm important, I need to do this. What comes out is he wraps a towel around his waist and then ends up washing the feet of his disciples. Not only his disciples, this is what's crazy, he washes the feet of the person that's going to betray him that leads him to death. That's what happens when he is squeezed. His title, his label that he lives by is that he is from God, he is going to God, and so nothing on this earth matters more important than that. When life squeezes you guys, what is the thing that comes out? What title rises to the surface the most? Because I think we need better labels in our life. I love this book, Atomic Habits. It's all about a book about how to have good habits in your life. And the premise of this book is pretty interesting. He says that habits that form out of your identity become a part of your life. The whole book says this, that if you want to be a person that works out, you can't see yourself as a out of shape person trying to become in shape. Because your old identity is going to sabotage that plan every single time. If you see yourself as an out-of-shape person, that will continuously rob you of the habits in your life. It happens all the time in our Christian faith as well. If you see yourself as, I'm no good, I'm a sinner, I never get anything right, that will continuously sabotage your life of you trying to live this life out. And this whole book talks about if you want to run a marathon, if that's your goal, the goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to transform your identity to be a runner because runners run. If you want to be a healthy person, you need to see yourself as a healthy person because healthy people eat right and they work out. Don't just see yourself, I want to work out so many times a week because it will sabotage. You need to change your identity. You need to change your mindset. And I love that because it's these habits, this identity that you have, these habits form out of your identity. I heard a pastor say this recently. It's not my analogy, but I absolutely love this that I heard recently. But I come from a family that works out a lot. So my sister's a professional soccer, or she was a professional soccer player, and she's my twin. And so I would live vicariously through her stories. After that, she got into working out, and she married a CrossFit athlete. They went to the CrossFit Games. Like, they're just these huge athletes, and they work out all the time. And so naturally, when they started owning this gym, I go back home and I will also work out with them a lot. Here's a picture of them. So that's my sister on the right. That's my twin. And they're just, even their daughter is just, she can hang on a bar for 10 minutes. And it's just incredible to see this family. And so it's funny because I have almost the same genetic code as my sister. She's my twin, okay? That I actually start doing the same workouts as they do because they gave me their workouts. So I start doing their workouts. I start working out 3 or 4 times a week. And I know I don't look like it, but I do. I work out as well as they do. I have the same type of weights, just different sizes that they have. I listen to the same music. I literally, when I go back home, I do the exact same workouts. The crazy thing is I do not look like Sam, and I could not find a picture with him with a shirt on because he just doesn't have one ever because he's just ripped, everything about him. And so I look at this picture and I'm like, why do I not look like that? I do the same things they do. Why? And what's fascinating is this, that when they go to the gym, they take the gym home with them. It changes everything they do. It changes how they eat, how they function, the friends they hang out with. Everything they do is functioning around the health of this gym because they're athletes. When I go to the gym, I let the gym justify my actions the rest of the week. You see the difference? That when they go to the gym and the gym changes them and their habits they do. When I go to the gym, I literally let it justify the rest of my week. I say, I can eat that now because I just worked out. Right? I don't know anybody else. I can eat that piece of cake or 2 pieces of cake. I worked out on Monday, okay? My family will say, I worked out on Monday, so I can't eat that, or I won't do that, or I will get up early and do this. It changes their mindset, but for me, I let it justify my entire week. So often we have titles, things that we think we want. Maybe you are a disciple of Jesus, and you're like, that is my title. But it's not really your title. It's something you want, but it's not something that changes you. That should change how you live the rest of your week. Or you like me so often, that when you leave church, you say, I can do that now because I went to church on Sunday. I did that because I went to Easter service last week, so I can do this. Do you let your title of disciple change the rest of your week, or do you let it justify the rest of your week? Now, I love these stories. And I love that these labels, these titles, because they literally live out how we're going to live our life. Your title tells your story, and we need better labels and titles. The world wants to put labels on us all the time. That you're weird, that you're not good enough. Maybe it's good labels, that you're smart or a hard worker, but these labels are not good enough, and they're going to let you fall short unless you have the right titles. The title of you are His, you are from God, and you are going to God. That is your title. That is your history. And that should change everything. The problem with this is that we often forget our labels. We forget our titles. We forget the fact that we are a disciple, that is the first thing that we were called to do. And so I love the rest of the story because Peter forgets who he is. It says this in verse 6. I came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, do not wash my feet. Jesus answered him, what I am doing you will not understand now, but afterward you will understand. Peter told him, you shall never wash my feet. And Jesus answered him, if I do not wash you, you will have no share with me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. Jesus said to him, the one who is bathed does not need to wash except for his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean, but not every one of you, for he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said, not all of you are clean. I love Peter because he's always putting his foot in his mouth, always. He always says the one thing you shouldn't say. And Jesus is like, just stop talking. You're just going to get this later. You're not going to get it. Just you will. Wait a few days. And I love this because Peter is like, you will never wash my feet. And if you've missed something, do not miss this, that you cannot have anything to do with Jesus unless he washes you. I love that statement. That is the gospel story. So often when we think of Jesus or we think about being Christians, we want to go and save the day. The gospel story starts here. You are not the hero of the story. So often we want to leave, we want to go do things, we want to go be the good news, we want to go help and serve people, we want to be the person on the front lines, and I think that's awesome. But if it doesn't come from the place of you letting Jesus wash you first, it is a mistake, and you will never live out that title well. Peter forgets this. He forgets the fact that his title does not start out by going and being good news, but sitting at the feet of Jesus. That is first and foremost your title. That you are nothing without Jesus, that you are broken, that you will mess up, you will continue to go after this and fail every time without the person of Jesus. I'm amazed how often we forget this. The gospel is not something to be achieved, but to be received at the feet of Jesus. But how many of us reject grace? We're like, no, I'm going to earn it, God. I'm going to show you that I can do this. I'm going to try harder than anybody else. I'm going to white knuckle it. I'm going to get my life together. We have this list of I'm going to go to church every week, and you can list out all the habits you want. But if your title is not sitting at the feet of Jesus first, you will never get to where you want to go. And Peter forgets this. He says, if I just try harder, but you are no match for the power of darkness. Self-sufficiency is one of the quickest ways to miss Jesus. And I think that's why so many of the Pharisees in the first century just missed him. Trying to work your way to heaven except accepting what Jesus has already given you. I love this. This is the gospel story right here. It says in Romans 5:6, says this. You see, at just the right time, when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. Very rarely will anyone die for a righteous person, though for a good person, someone might possibly dare to die. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this, that while we're still sinners, Christ died for us. That is the gospel story. It isn't because you went off and did great things, and Peter's going to go off and start the church and do incredible things. But it's not that. What happens in this story is that Jesus is saying, your title is sitting at the feet of Jesus. You cannot have any place with me unless you get washed first. And don't reject grace. That is the entire sum of the Bible, is that God came to rescue you, to bring you to himself, that he wants nothing less than to have you in this story. People think my job is to convince people to love God, and I don't think that's true. I think my job is to convince people that God loves them. That is the whole point of why I'm here. I want to tell people that whatever you do, whatever you think you've done, God loves you. And Scripture says that he died for the ungodly. And it gets weird. He didn't just die for his friends. He died for the people that will never accept him, that will never believe it. Maybe you were here today and you're like, I don't even believe this story. I got drugged by a friend to this church. Good news, God still loves you. That's the gospel story. You may be like, I think this is a weird story. I think it's all made up. One of my students calls this magic. Good news, God still loves you. That's the gospel story. He will do anything to bring you back to himself. And it's kind of like, honestly, if my kids were kind of chasing after somebody that was like, I don't want anything to do with you, but they're like, no, I love them, I want to go after them. I'd be like, I think that's unhealthy. I think that's obsessive, right? I'd be like, this is not a good relationship to be in. And it gets weirder because Scripture says, like, why would he do this? And I love 1 John 4:8 just says this, that God is love. Why God does this, not because he likes love, not because he demonstrates love. It says that God is love. It's his title. It is his identity. And out of that, everything else flows. It is obsessive. It is this thing that God will do anything because it's his identity. You need to be washed first. And that's an invitation for you today, that if you are broken and you are out and you feel like there's no hope, man, God would love to wash you and usher you into a beautiful story. I love 1 Peter 2:9. It says this, but you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. That is the gospel story. That's where it starts. Taking you out of darkness into his marvelous light. That God has big plans for you, big titles for you, big labels for you to change the world. But it starts at the feet of Jesus. As we continue this story, as we kind of wrap up the end of this section, it says this, when he had washed their feet and put on his outer garments and resumed his place, he said to them, you do not understand what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that's what I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash the feet of others. For I have given you an example that you should also do just as I have done for you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. It's a very simple thing. God is love, and he's calling his people to be love into a broken world. If serving is beneath you, then leadership is beyond you. If you consider yourself a leader, but you don't serve, you will not be effective in this life or the next. When Jesus saw sin, he saw an opportunity to redeem and to heal. When he saw disease, he saw a chance to heal. When he saw dirty feet, he saw opportunities to serve. And my question is, as people of God, do we walk around, what do you see when you're at the store? Do you see opportunities to serve? When you see a world that is broken and hurting and full of hate and division, do you see opportunities to serve? Or are you so much like me where you try to avoid places like that so often? The places we avoid are the places Jesus seeks. Because your title tells your story. Let me end with this. I love this because we come from a long history, honestly, in this world of being servants. That this call of washing other people's feet has changed the church ever since that day. That the disciples understood it. They saw Jesus live that out and model it out. That for the rest of their life, they literally lived a life of serving other people. And it wasn't just the disciples. It goes on to the church, and they literally changed the world as we know it. In 300 years, it changes the entire Roman world. And one of the ways it does this is that a lot of pandemics happened, actually, throughout the Roman world. Over and over, these diseases would come, and they'd wipe out a lot of the Roman world. One, in 165 AD, a smallpox crisis swept through one of the greatest generations, the greatest empires ever, the Roman world. And it had such high death rates. They say almost 50% of people that got this end up dying. 2,000 people a day were dying. It got so bad that people didn't know what to do in the Roman world, that in the second century, that people were just leaving family members behind because they didn't know how to treat these people. They left their family, they left their friends, their work, and they would just leave because they didn't know how to take care of people. After all this was happening, what was crazy is that there was one group of people, instead of leaving, they stood in the midst of these pandemics and in the midst of these cities, and it transformed. You know who those people were? It was first century and second century Christians. As they were being persecuted, these are people being persecuted for their faith, but it was Christians that stayed in the midst of this heartbreak. And what scholars actually say is that amongst the Christians, they say the death rate was half of what it was in the rest of the world. And it wasn't because God was doing miracles. Maybe it was, but maybe it was just because people stayed there and took care of them and got water for them and treated them and loved them in the midst when they were broken. I love this because there was a bishop in Alexandria. And actually 260 AD, 100 years after that pandemic, another one happens. And he says this, and I love this line. He says this: most of our brother Christians showed unbounded love and loyalty, never sparing themselves and thinking only of one another. And he says, heedless of danger, they took charge of the sick, attending to their every need and ministering to them in Christ. And with them departed this life sincerely happy, for they were infected by others with this disease, drawing on themselves the sickness of their neighbors and cheerfully accepting their pain. Many, in nursing and curing others, transferred their death to themselves and died in their stead. The best of our brothers lost their lives in this matter, and so that death in this form seems in every way the equal of martyrdom. This is crazy because it wasn't just church leaders. It says the church stayed in the midst of this pandemic, and many of them died in their stead, because they knew what it looks like to live out their identity, that people of Jesus serve and they wash other people's feet. They understood that it took sacrifice in the midst of the gospel. And this pattern repeats over and over throughout the Roman world. So much so that it even says that the emperor gets so mad because it says the Christians were not even taking care of themselves, they were also taking care of people outside of the faith. And let me just end with this. I love this quote because Martin Luther, if you know, even 1,500 years later, this tradition of serving still continues. And Martin Luther is known for a lot of different things. He was a reformer of the Protestant church. But one of my favorite things about him is there was another pandemic when he was ministering. And it was in 1527. And the Black Plague that killed so many people in the world around him when he was in Germany. He was there. One happened in 1300s, but in the 1500s it came back. And it says that when it reached his city, he says the leaders of the church came to Martin Luther and says, we got to get out of here. And he says, get your family. We need to leave the city. And what I love about Martin Luther, he says that our family will not leave, but we will minister to the sick. He ended up writing a tract or a pamphlet that he threw out to all of Germany to say, what does it look like for Christians to live out this pandemic? And it says in this pamphlet, this is what he put. He says, we will die at our posts. Christian doctors cannot abandon their hospitals. Christian governors cannot flee their districts. Christian pastors cannot abandon their congregations. The plague does not dissolve our duties. And I love this. It turns them into crosses on which we must be prepared to die. Guys, that's what it looks like to be followers of Jesus, that no matter what, and when we are squeezed, what comes out of us is not panic. What comes out of us is servanthood, that we will wash the feet of our neighbors because that is who we are. That is the title we carry because that is who Jesus was. Guys, we're going to go into communion. And Ali, there's no better way to talk about this. As the Last Supper was there, Jesus ends up taking this meal with his disciples, and he ends up saying that this example that I'm going to show you will let you live out this title wherever you go. And he has a meal, and he takes a bread, and he breaks it, and he says, this is my body that was broken for you, that I will sacrifice my body for you so you can have life. He ends up taking the juice, and he ends up drinking it, and he talks about it being the blood that will be shed for them. That once again, your title starts there, that God died for you so you could have life. It's sacrifice, it's servanthood. That is our title. That's our identity. And so I'm going to pray, and then you guys can go up and get the bread. There's gluten-free as well. And take it back to your seat, and then we'll take it together. God, thank you so much that you have lived out this title, that our title tells our story. God, I'm thankful that we have a model for this, that it's not just something you call us to, but it's something you lived out. We thank you, God, in Jesus' name. Amen.